E.J. Dion is a columnist, as I said, for the Washington Post. And Sam Tannenhouse is the editor of the New York Times Book Review and author of The Death of Conservatism. You first, E.J., and thanks for being with us. This thing about Buffett, is this going to be big, this fight about the very rich paying maybe 15% in capital gains compared to a lot of people paying 30%, 35% in taxes?
Well, thanks for having me on, Chris. And yeah, I think you can tell it's a big deal from the way conservatives are going after Warren Buffett. I mean, Warren Buffett is the people's capitalist, really. He doesn't dress fancy. He doesn't remind you of that banker on the chance card in Monopoly. And he has given us the simplest way to understand the unfairness of the tax code. You only pay 15% on capital gains. Very, very rich people, particularly investors, hedge fund guys, that's where they make most of their money. A plumber, a nurse, a cop, they make their money through their labor. And so what this is saying is, if you make your money through capital, fine. It's fine to be rich, but you shouldn't tax labor at a higher rate than you tax capital. And Warren Buffett crystallized it.
What do you make of this, Sam, in terms of conservative philosophy? Is this protection of the very wealthy consistent with the history of the Republican Party, even its recent history?
It's fascinating, Chris. Great to meet E.J. I've been reading his stuff for years. I've never actually seen him up close. It's funny, if you look back at the first big Republican Party gains in the modern era, and stay with me, they go all the way back to 1946, when Robert Taft was a great figure in the Republican Party and led the Congress to their victory in 1946, Democratic President Harry Truman. Taft wanted to cut taxes, but the emphasis was on the middle class and the poor, and he made it very clear. The wealthy, of course, pay more. This was the understanding the business community always had. During the Eisenhower years, it's fascinating, when William F. Buckley Jr., the greatest of all modern conservatives, started a new magazine, National Review. He looked for money from Wall Street and other very wealthy people. One of their arguments was going to be the injustices of a tax code in which the very wealthy paid 90%, and the business people said, we can live with this. We pay a larger share because we make more money. We don't expect to be infinitely richer than everybody else. We'll pay the large share. And this was standard conservative philosophy all the way through the 1960s as well.
Well, let's take a look at a town hall meeting in Silicon Valley. Here's President Obama. He took questions from the crowd, and one of the people in the crowd said something very much like Warren Buffett.
I don't have a job, but that's because I've been lucky enough to live in Silicon Valley for a while and work for a small startup down the street here that did quite well. So I'm unemployed by choice. My question is, would you please raise my taxes?
E.J., you know the fight we're starting here on this show. You know that the very well-off people say to these people, you know the retort. Why don't you just tell us what the retort is?
Yeah, well, the retort is, well, you can pay it in if you want. And the problem with that is we're not talking about individual charity. We're not talking about what you put in the church basket or send to your synagogue. We are talking about what are our responsibilities to maintain the government of our country. And I think, thanks partly to Elizabeth Warren, we're having a different conversation now where this isn't about punishing the rich, whether it's that guy or Warren Buffett or somebody else. This is about the fact that if you're lucky enough to be born here, we didn't pick the country we were born in, you have a chance to make your hard work turn into something. And people who do better have a responsibility to the upkeep of the commons, which allowed them to become rich. So this is not about hating rich people.
The upkeep of the country. I mean, there's a nice sort of household term EJ's come up with. The upkeep, keeping our bridges safe, keeping our roads worthy, keeping our electrical systems working, keeping our sewers working. That's called upkeep. Shouldn't the people with the most money, be asked to be done the most? It seems to me that's common sense. It's not about punishment. It's Willie Sutton, go where the money is.
Well, can I jump in here?
Sure, you're in.
Yeah, well, part of the argument is that government actually does some useful things, and the business community has prospered from it. So
Yes.
of course you're not simply taking your hard-earned dollars and giving them to some lazy bum on the street. You're showing that we have a system that, for all its failures, actually made this country what it is, and that is what you do to, contribute your part to it. There's an interesting corollary to this too, because what we're really talking about is just a kind of reflexive hatred of government itself.
Exactly.
Right? Now, if you go back and look at Republican and Democratic debates in the Kennedy era, something, Chris, you know especially well, Kennedy wanted to cut taxes, and it was Republicans who actually opposed it because they thought it was fiscally imprudent. Why? Because they thought the government should be solvent and it should do the important things. If you go through the Nixon years, you see Nixon and Daniel Patrick Moynihan coming up with a huge program to give money to poor people, a negative income tax, which came out of very conservative economic theory, the theory of Milton Friedman, with the idea that this is one of the functions government has.
Let's take a look at what they're saying now. This summer, Senator Warren Hatch of Utah, fighting for his life against the Tea Partiers out there, suggests that the poor aren't doing their fair share. Now, this is crazy talk, but let's listen.
I get a little tired of hearing the Obama approach towards shared sacrifice. And I hear how they're so caring for the poor and so forth. The poor need jobs. And they also need to share some of the responsibility.
You know, EJ and Sam, last thought. What do you make of Michelle Bachmann in that last debate? I didn't think the moderators followed up, and they should have. She said, I don't want to pay anything to the government. I shouldn't have to pay. I should keep every nickel I earn. That's crazy talk, isn't it? I mean, who is going to pay for the bridges, the wars, and the fence they want built across the Mexican border? Who's supposed to pay for it if you don't pay anything in taxes? EJ, then Sam.
And the other thing, by the way, and it's great to be with Sam, who brings up folks like Robert Taft in our history, but the thing about government is no one benefits more than government than the well-off, because what does government do? It protects their property. It makes sure their contracts are enforced. It makes sure they get paid. It keeps things stable. And this notion that poor people don't contribute enough, first of all, they pay a lot of their income in sales taxes. They pay property taxes directly or indirectly through their rent. They pay payroll taxes. And this notion of beating up the poor on taxes is nuts.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a great debate. I think you guys are winning it. EJ Dionne and Sam Tanas. Great history there, Sam.